the executive director of Oasis. And let me give you a little bit of background on him. He is the Director, Center for the Community Transformation. He's the Assistant Africa Director of Wycliffe Africa, in charge of Mid-Africa, co-facilitator with 2 leaders from Kenya and India, Impact Conference of Global South Organizations, an initiative that brings together organizations from Asia and Africa since 2013. A member of the Advocacy Network for Africa Forum, a network based in Washington, D.C. Past roles as Executive Director, Cameroon Association for Bible Translation and Literacy, which is the CABTL. He's been the facilitator of the Platform for Impact in Cameroon, an international initiative that brings together the various denominational blocks and Bible translation agencies to serve communities in Cameroon, back in 2013. He was a co-facilitator with 2 leaders from Kenya and India. Again, I think it mentioned and has been teased out a little bit more on the Conference for Global South Organizations, an initiative that brings together organizations. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Ife Tembon. I see that Cameroon is well represented here today, so we'll have a robust conversation, if you would, on the going-ons of what's taking place in our beloved Cameroon, and of course throughout the continent. So the floor is yours, Mr. Tembon.
Thank you so much, and greetings to everyone from a very snowy Minnesota. I want to pay homage to Mary and Watch Democracy Grow for putting this together. I think it's important that as Africans, we engage in this way, in these conversations, to be able to see some of the challenges we face as a people and reflect on ways that we can move Africa forward and overcome some of those challenges. As we all know, as a people, our colonial history, our post-colonial history is not very pretty. We are facing tremendous challenges, tragedy after tragedy across the continent. And in some ways, we've become like a laughing stock in the world. People point to Africa. We see international NGOs have taken advantage of the endemic poverty in Africa to build what I call the aid industrial complex, and many people have called it that way. And so we find difficulties in trying to move forward as a people with sit-tight dictators. People that an economist like George Aite has called the hippo generation, who do not want to leave power, who are really vampires, and he describes them like a blind leading the clueless. So you have a ruling elite that have taken place with their partners in the Western world and are causing a lot of trouble to the continent and standing in the way of development in the continent. We find ourselves as a continent or as a people in a world that is very competitive, in a world that is very aggressive, that see the resources in Africa as an opportunity to take and don't care about the lives of our people. Western companies and countries that put more emphasis on economic resources than on the people, than on human rights, on the development of the people. And we find ourselves in that very difficult position as a people. And it is true that many people have described Africa as a very wealthy continent because of the natural resources. But I feel the wealth of Africa does not lie in those resources that we have, but in our people, in developing our people. And I think some of the panelists have highlighted this, the whole area of education, like my brother from Kenya, Daniel, shared, investing in building our young people, investing in building our people. But we have these vampire states. We've seen that with those dictators who do not want to leave power, who constantly change the constitution to remain in power. We've seen that recently in Cote d'Ivoire, in Guinea, in Congo, and in Cameroon, where you have a leader who is a partner to Western governments, has been there for 38 years, has been protected because he opens the door for the US, for the UK, for France especially. And across all of Francophone area, we all know that those countries do not really have independence. They are still controlled. We have puppet leaders in those countries controlled by France. And each time a leader rises against the French colonial policy, they are kicked out of power. We saw the example of Burkina Faso with Thomas Sankara. We saw the example of Cote d'Ivoire with Gbagbo, where the French literally came in, took a sitting president and took him to The Hague. And today he has been proven that he is not guilty of those crimes. And then we have a continent with a continental organization like EU in place that is supposed to be the hope. But they are not, they're playing the biddings of the Western powers. They've talked about silencing the guns, which is more of a slogan than really an actual plan and vision to implement peace across the continent. And nowhere is this more visible in Cameroon. Cameroon has been described in the past as an island of peace, not so much because there was peace in the hearts of the people, but because of the fact that the vampire state, the dictator, used the military to silence any dissent, to silence any opinion that was contrary to what the government wants. And people sat down quietly. And now we have an explosion because a young generation has risen that does not believe in French colonization. And this is just to explain the conflict in Cameroon that are between Southern Cameroon and French Cameroon. This is a territory that was colonized by the Germans, a much larger territory that extended into Gabon, into Congo, into Chad. And but after the First World War, the Germans were kicked out and the territory was divided into two, and part of it integrated into French Central Africa colony, and then what we have as Cameroon today, ruled independently or separately. But then Southern Cameroon was handed over to the British. And French Cameroon had independence in 1960, and Southern Cameroons had to make a choice whether to become independent by joining Nigeria or by joining French Cameroon, which was a negotiation at the UN between the British and the French. The people wanted to truly be independent on their own, but that option was not given. They were forced to join. And so it was a colonial, they were woven together in a way that it wasn't going to last, because the French system is very different from the English-speaking system because of the colonial heritage. And so this was bound to blow out at some point in the history. And so we see it today, where it started out with young people going on the streets with peace branches asking for a restoration of a federal union that was agreed when they joined. And the government decided to respond with violence. And I think across Africa, most of the governments feel that they have the monopoly of violence. And when this went on for too long, the young people decided to pick up guns to defend themselves, often by actually hiding and attacking soldiers and taking their weapons to fight back. And we see the chaos that's going on today, where the military has been more chaotic in terms of its response, burning down more than 300 villages, often burning even older people in their homes, killing young people, killing children, in ways that the world, I've looked at what's going on, because the EU, the UN, and many Western countries have turned their back and feel like nothing is going on. Actually had a visit to the EU in January of 2019 to discuss this. And somebody had a conversation with me off the record, and he told me the EU's plan or policy towards what's going on in Cameroon is the monkey policy, to pretend as if they don't see, they don't hear, and to say nothing about it. Other Western governments have had some conversations about what is going on. The European Parliament even had a hearing about this and passed a resolution, but the EU has been very silent, and which tells us that the hope in the EU, There's no way we can truly hope in the AU anymore because of the challenges we see across the continent and the attitude of the AU vis-a-vis some of those challenges. So Cameroon is a basket case. It's a very sad case because of the atrocities. Somebody has described it as Rwanda in slow motion. And we found ourselves as an activist working instead with Western powers because we realized that they listen to us more. My letter to the AU was never responded to different leaders of the AU. None of it, I heard back from none of them. And instead, with the US government, with the Canadian government, we've had hearings in their parliaments. The EU has had a hearing. I've had meetings in the UK parliament, and a meeting with the German parliament is scheduled for the 26th of November. So we realize that some of the solutions for us as Africans comes from abroad, which is not the best way. As Africans, we need to be able to challenge ourselves to find a way forward. And that's some of the things our organization has been engaged in. My organization has worked in Cameroon for many years, engaging with local communities, because we believe that to change our people, we need to start at the grassroots, engaging, helping people to dream about what change will look like for their community. We bring tribal chiefs, youth leaders, and past religious leaders together in the same room and say, hey, let's dream a little bit about our community. If change was going to happen in our community in the next 5 years, what will that change look like? We paint a picture of that future. We look at what is our current situation, where are we as a community? We paint a picture and we look at, okay, what can we do to lay the foundations to move towards our dream as a community in the next 12 to 18 months. And we are able to make a plan and an action plan that can help us move in that direction. We look, okay, what can we have? What do we have in our community that can help us to move in that direction? And as leaders begin to think about these things, they realize, oh, we have quite a lot in our community that we had not thought about, because our people have been conditioned to wait on foreign aid. I talk about this whole aid industrial complex. They've been conditioned to wait for somebody to come and do things for them, not realizing that there's so much we can do to improve our lives. And often those who come into our continent to do things, do it for us. And when they do things for us, they take away our dignity. They take away our own self-worth. But when people in their own community begin to think about solutions and find help in terms of training, for example, we help leaders, how do you develop vision? How do you mobilize your community to participate in a vision in a community development program? How do you raise money from your people, and how do you become accountable? Because to me, it starts at the grassroots. Although our continent is looking dark today, but I believe there is hope, especially hope for the next generation, the younger people. Pauline emphasized that, which I totally buy into it. Our younger generation, our youths, are satisfied with what is going on. They're angry with what is going on. And I believe that as a diaspora and as a people from our continent, we need to find these platforms to be able to help our young people to engage with one another across many borders. You know, if we know our continent has been intentionally blocked from one another, to travel across Africa is very expensive. It's something intentional. And in some areas, there are no roads, especially in Francophone areas, to connect country to country. But technology has given us a powerful platform to help engage our young people, to share ideas, to move us forward, to dream about the future. When you look at the UN development programs, the Millennium Foundation, Millennium Development Programs, to those goals, or they talk about sustainable goals. I don't buy into those goals because they have not taken into consideration the voices of those who need those goals, who need those programs. UN gathered a number of experts who thought in our place, who developed plans in our place without our participation. And they have this big one-size-fits-all, instead of starting at the grassroots with people reflecting on their own a local situation. How can we help move our community forward? And another thing is language was not taken into consideration. The language of the people. We are helping communities develop books in their own language, engage with new ideas that improve their lives in their own language. We're helping them understand what the importance of education. In their own language, develop a book called Knowledge for a Better Life to help. These are stories, different stories about corruption, different stories about the experience of young girls who were given into marriage very early, and others who chose to go to school. Their parents chose to send them to school, and do a comparison for the people to hear those stories and see the difference, and for communities to have conversations around those stories that can help them change their attitude vis-a-vis certain cultural norms. I believe that for us to move forward as a continent, it needs to start at the grassroots, but we need to engage with one another, like democracy, like Miri and Watch Democracy Grow have put us together. And we need to extend that to youths across many countries to bring us together, to reflect on our challenges. What can we do? There are many young people with brilliant ideas that can be shared. We can even take ideas from elsewhere that can be contextualized on our continent and move our people forward. It is time for us Africans to take ownership of our own development, of our own future, and not let the West, not let foreign NGOs come and do it in our place. We need to empower our people to make a difference. So thank you. I don't know if the questions, conversations, I just want to open up to that.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Really appreciate your remarks. There'll be an opportunity to open for questioning. We're just going to check one more time to see if our fellow panelists, Dr. Harisu, was able to, I believe Dr. Harisu was able to get on. If he's able to get on, can he please present himself so that he could take the floor? If not, what we'll do is we'll open it up, and Daniel Juma, I believe, and also Mr. Efi Tembon will answer questions. Let us go into some questioning. I see that you also may wear a hat, a clergy hat of some sort, Mr. Efi Tembon. Is that correct? Are you a member of the clergy as well?
I'm a missionary.
You're a missionary. So I wanted, if you would, to just tease out a little bit about liberation theology a little bit in youth capacity building, youth engagement. Is there a role for, people say liberation theology, but some people say activism within the church. Is there such a thing? And is there a role to play in youth capacity building? And in fact, how is it materializing in everyday reality right now with all of the turmoil that's taking place, I think, in the Limbe, in the northwest, southwest part of the resource field region of Nigeria. In fact, I will say that per capita, you have a girth of intellectuals, civic leaders that believe that they have not something to only offer the larger Cameroon, because they're actually entrepreneurs, they're professionals, doctors, engineers throughout Cameroon. But they felt as if their way of life was being attacked because the schools, the barristers were being attacked, the teachers were being attacked, the judges, so they were being replaced by Francophone. So you're right. Some people have said that it's analogous to other areas where you've seen some level of ethnic cleansing. But there's also in the mix, there is the curse of a resource-filled region or a resource-filled country. And it seems as if that you guys are going through that period where there's wanton killings reported and what have you. So first, the liberation theology, is there a place for it in youth development? And then, if you would bring it home, because I don't think people already understand the level of carnage that's taking place in that part of the world. I have received some pictures that I cannot stomach to see that this is happening in this day and age, and the world is not outraged. So please, if you could share some of your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think those are very important questions. I'll go with the liberation theology first. I think this is a battle I've had. I'm part of a global organization or movement of missionary organizations, and I've personally been involved in battles with Western mission organizations, because even though they have come on the continent with good intentions to help the people, they have worked just the same like the Western government, the Western NGOs. They've worked the same just like the US foreign policy of big stick diplomacy, where you need to bow. We use the carrots to make you bow to what we believe. They use money. And you know, the hand that gives is always on top to impose. And if you do not follow, they use the big stick to hit you hard. And so I've been in those battles because I feel the way they have worked on the continent sometimes, in some cases, have taken away dignity. They've rather done things for people without them, instead of building people and going out of the job. And I think I sat in a meeting with a Kenyan church leader who said, the time has come when any foreign missionary into the continent needs to be quarantined. They need to be put in a quarantine, and you need to check which one is good for the continent, and you release them out in the continent, and those that are not good, you send them back. So liberation theology to me is, I take it as the gospel. Jesus came into the world to help build people and send them and to stand. But when you come in and you make people you rather transform them into another culture to follow what you want, it doesn't help. Our desire is to see communities develop and stand on their own, follow their dreams, reach out for the best, and help their own children reach out for the best. And so I see the place in terms of the history of liberation theology. It was very powerful in South America, where the people took a stand against, they accepted the religion, but they needed something different. That religion was something to liberate people instead of holding them captive. So to me, that's the role. If we are missionaries, we need to be able to have that role on the continent to help people and help them to reach their best. Instead of doing things for them, we build their capacity to lead their own lives and reach their dreams. Concerning the atrocities in Southern Cameroon, it is horror. The world doesn't even know what's going on. Imagine a mother with a baby on their back being killed. Imagine soldiers getting into a home, a baby lying on the bed, the baby is shot. And just recently, 7, 8 children were shot in their classrooms. We have many massacres that have taken place, villages completely burned. Like I say, every single day I get pictures of this horror, of people killed, young people, especially young people of military age, are a prime target for the Cameroon military. And so this has been going on for far too long, and the world cannot be silent anymore. We've been speaking out and said, no, this has to stop. And this, Malcolm X made a statement that unless people are ready to pay a price for their freedom, they won't have freedom. And I feel the people of Southern Cameroon are paying a huge price for their freedom, that in this day and age, in this day when we think about democracy, we think about a civilized world where we think about human rights, we shouldn't be seeing this anymore. I think it's time for the world to rise up and say no. And for Africans, in spite of the EU, to be able to say no, enough is enough. We cannot watch this continue to happen in our own day and age.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let me ask for Daniel. Daniel, the case of Kenya, the spread